Good afternoon. Hello. I'm Lulu Wong, a Committee 100 member and Vice Chair of our New York region, and I have the distinct pleasure today of welcoming Mr. Gao Xiqing. He is a very distinguished member of the Chinese leadership, and he is Vice Chairman, President, and Chief Investment Officer of the Chinese Investment Corporation. And this, as you all know, is China's sovereign wealth fund. And today he will speak to us and has kindly agreed to take some questions after his speech. Mr. Gao has, on many occasions, and most recently at the Bao Forum, spoken very insightfully and forcefully about the challenges that China faces in investing overseas, particularly in the United States. And he speaks forcefully because he realizes that between the world's two largest markets, the U.S. and China, it is essential that Washington and Beijing, and actually all of us, understand the very complexities of these challenges and to seek constructive solutions to fostering a healthy investment environment for both countries' economic interests. And for this reason today, we are so proud to be able to welcome Mr. Gao to join us today to share his very unique perspectives on this issue. We also particularly welcome Mr. Gao today because in some ways he is a member of our C100 family. His lovely daughter-in-law, Wending, was a very talented intern at C100 for a while, and she just recently delivered a beautiful baby granddaughter to him. And so our C100 family continues to grow. So without further ado, may I welcome Mr. Gao.
Thank you, Lulu, and thank you, everyone. And I see a lot of friends here, and I feel very honored and fortunate to here to talk to our Committee 100 people, because I came to this country in 1982, and first thing I learned of the Chinese community here was this committee. So this committee to me was always a very large presence there. So today I have the fortune of talking to our friends here and to, in a way, communicate with our American friends. In every trip I come to this country, I talk not only to the investment community, but really to the government, because we, as a very large sovereign wealth fund, we can't escape from government regulations, from challenges by the various governments. And this government, of course, is by far the largest in the world, by far the most powerful, and by far the most righteous. But, we are certainly, all these things are very challenging for us as a sovereign wealth fund, especially as a sovereign wealth fund from China. For a time I thought after so many years open door policy, China has become one of the ordinary members of the world community, so that it will be regarded as just a ordinary boy in the block. But somehow, very often, it will be surprised by people, by the various governments, as being someone singled out, as someone who are challenged. We are. And we have mostly today. I'm asked to talk about our challenges, in investment in this country and in the world. And very often I would have to talk about it, but this time I would like to add things that would, be a little more relevant, because very recently we got challenged on one particular case, which I cannot talk in detail, but I already told my counterparties in this country yesterday and today that I was going to talk, and they said, you can talk about it, and you can get passionate about it, because they know I get very excited about it when we talk. Because, as everything else in this world, we're all challenged by the world, by the new uncertainties, by the change of dynamics. But sometimes, when you get to a certain age, like myself, you think the surprises are no longer there. Life becomes boring. But all of a sudden, you got people slap you in the face and telling you, "Okay, we don't like you," and that, of course, hurts. I can take a lot, so we don't. We try to be, provide some humor about it, but still, we all need to, to say it out. And Lulu was asking me what we should do about the China-U.S. bilateral relationships and these things. I said, well, keep talking. We just need to keep the dialogue. And we've been talking for the past 30-some years. Well, in fact, we started with the Warsaw talk, now that started in 1956. But, at the time when we actually started communicating with each other, that has been, for more than 70 years. And in fact, about 40 years. When I was still building a railroad in the mountains in China, we got these documents reading about the motives of Henry Kissinger and Richard Nixon to go to China and to talk to us. And so at that time, we started learning how we should deal with our American friends. In those days, of course, our American enemies. And today, the tables start to turn, and we thought we were friends, and now very often we were told that it's otherwise. The challenges are mostly twofold. One I would say external for us. That's all challenges outside of China, outside of our own control. And the things that we can't control, things that we can't even blame ourselves for. And there are challenges, which I would call internal challenges, that are the challenges that we have to blame ourselves for, and we have to worry about it ourselves, and we have to change ourselves to try to accommodate to the new world. Externally, it's mostly, again, two dimensions. One is what I would call the changing world. After 2008, in fact, it started a little earlier than that, but really, most tellingly, after 2008, then you started seeing all the regulatory changes, the whole pendulum swing, goes to one extreme, really. I studied legal history for a long time, and I'm still very interested in it, and it's very interesting for me to see how the pendulum swings. So I don't, when people ask me, is this going to be really bad? I said, no, it's going to go back again, maybe another 20 years. But most investors don't care about such a long time. But we are the sovereign wealth fund. We are, by the law, where our performance is evaluated every 10 years. So we don't have to worry about things that most researchers in investment banks will tell us. They usually tell me, 6 months from now, 12 months from now. If I ask, well, what about 3 years? And say, we don't look at that far. Last year when I talked, I said, what about a war breaking out? I said, that sort of thing we don't worry about. Why? This is out of the norm, and we don't, as researchers, we get paid to talk about it only the next 6 months. So, but for us, we can't do that. We don't get paid, but we worry about things much longer term. So for these paradigm shifts, for all the new products, for the products that are already not there, we have to worry. Because when we first started in 2007, we thought we were going to be totally passive. We thought we were going to be just a very boring, the institutional investor, which would mostly invest in the open market. We won't touch anything that's direct or private or, interesting. But, soon afterward established there was the financial crisis. So when we look at the situation, we knew that we're never going to win anything if we stay in that boring field. So now our goal really is 50% public market, 50% alternative. Yeah, that's a very funny field, but everything, not in the open market, it would be alternative. So now in the first few years, our investment was mostly in the, according to the relative composition of the capital market in the world. And this country's capital market takes up over 60% of the world capital market. So we were at the time 70% investing in this country. But then that, of course, would have to change because of a lot of reasons, but mostly because what happened in this country, because of what happened with the regulatory framework. That's the second part of my external challenge. That is the change of mentality of all the regulators. That started out in this country, but then very soon it spills out to Europe and to many countries. And when we were asked by American regulators as to whether or not we're studying them, they were going to follow them, I said, well, we did that a long time ago. When they had all these new sort of regulatory requirements. I said, our government had always been that way. Since when? I said, well, since about 3,000 years ago. We always control, and we always distrust the market, and we always think that the market is like a little boy, and it has to be disciplined. So, now for the regulators here to do it that way, of course, it's a challenge for them. But for us, it's a huge challenge because we can no longer, do a lot of things that we thought we would do. And that sort of thing, for a time we thought it was, what people would call on a level playing field. So we, as one of the investors in the world, though we have a little more money than most other investors, we're still, we're a passive investor. We thought it would be treated the same as other people, or so we were told. But very soon we found out it's not the case. And, as signified by this recent case, and we were more or less told, not in exact words, more or less told that we're singled out as a different investor. So if we want to invest in certain types of investment, then we'll be looked at differently than other investors. So we feel that I personally really wasn't that surprised because I'm always a cynic person. So I look at it and I said, okay, they always treated us that way. It's only that some of us conveniently think that we're different. We're not different, but we are. We are. So when I talk to my regulatory friends in this country, and some people say, well, we review over 10,000 cases every year, and we let go almost all of them. Only about 100-ish cases would go through our process. And you should look at the, it sounds like our government. So you should look at the bigger picture. You should look at this 10,000 cases rather than this 100 cases. I said, the first thing I learned in this country, in the law school here, is that what is important is really not what you do for the big majority. That is what you do for an individual, what you do for the minority. When I first heard that in my criminal law class, I was really surprised. I said, oh, it's true. I thought it was propaganda that our government said that the American government looks into the interests of the minority, the few rich people. And now finally I got the revelation that it is. But of course the rationale is that, the essence of law is to protect these few people, because if you can't protect the few, then you can't protect the majority. Now, we're not exactly the few they aim to protect, so we got singled out. But that's one of the things I'm very realistic about. But that's a thing that's not very very conducive to the environment that we would like to foster. And I know many people sitting here are for the more dialogue of the two countries and for the promotion of trade and investment in the two countries. And because we know between the two countries, we can probably solve, I don't know the percentages, maybe 99% of all the problems in the world. We do have a lot of things in common, and we do have a lot of interests to share. And we are very complementary in many ways. And we do share a lot of things in common, even though we express these things in a different way. Therefore, I would always like to, to keep the dialogue and say, okay, please tell me what's wrong with me, so that I can improve. But then, in the past few days, what we were told is that, look, it's very difficult for us to tell you what exactly was wrong. You figure out yourself. So that, is not easy. So I still think that these things we have to, our government thought that they should send people like myself to study in this country and try to talk to people more so that eventually understand the culture, understand what people actually mean when they say A, which they really mean B, and you figure out how to get there. But, now that on the average level, the Chinese understand Americans much more than the other way around. And on the average level, the Chinese who speak the language of this country and read the literature of this country a lot more than otherwise. But still, we still don't quite understand it. So I think we need more chances to get to talk to each other and more opportunities to try to understand each other. I know many of you guys sitting here have been working on it for your life, and not enough. We still have to do more. That's the part that that's the part of my, what they call me the official complaint. And I've done with that. And now I started to talk about our own problems. This is what I would call the internal challenges. As a sovereign wealth fund and as a totally state-owned enterprise and as a state-owned enterprise in China, which is very significant for many regulators in this country, and because I've been dealing with them and I know that eventually they deal with sovereign wealth fund in China differently from sovereign wealth fund in some other countries. But we know full well the inadequacies we have. As a state-owned enterprise, you already disadvantaged simply because of the incentive systems, because of the way people are taught and the way people are chosen, and therefore the way people are conditioned to think and conditioned to behave. And we've been fighting with that sort of challenge for the past almost 6 years since our inception in late 2007. And we've been losing people year on year. But that, on average, we lost about, I'm trying to think, it's like 27 the year before, 20-ish last year. But this is, if you look at the overall numbers, well, that's not a big number because for most large institutions, you lose people every day. But, for us, we still think this is problematic because the reason why people leave, people leave for all sorts of reasons. But for us, one of the most important reasons to leave was for two reasons. One, compensation scheme. Two, this is the words of some of our people who left and said, because half of our people, our professionals, are trained in the Western world, mostly in this country, and many in Europe, Germany, France, Italy, the UK, and some in Japan. And these are returnees. And the complaint they have to me is that, look, I've been abroad for too long, and I've been used to working in a simpler environment, and I can't deal with politics here. And I said, you never had any politics in the foreign institutions? I said, oh yes, every agency would have some politics, but this sort of politics I can't deal with. So, over time I've become the psychiatrist in my company, and so today they all call me the chief shrink. And everyone who had a problem would always come in and talk to me. That's why my daytime is mostly spent on talking to people, taking complaints. And so I applied to move my office lower down to a lower floor because, I just want to avoid the urge of jumping out of the building one day. I told them that the highest suicidal rate in this country, for at least at the time when I was here, was for the shrinks. But fortunately, so far I'm still working. I'm still optimistic. But the thing is, what's the kind of system you have? You have to work with it. We all know. No system is perfect. But if you have a system where you know what the problem is, but you can't, you find it very difficult to change, and it's frustrating. And that sort of challenge, I'm sure, over time we're going to try to overcome. And personally, I've been working on that for all these years, either in my previous capacity in other government agencies or today. I'm still working on it. And this is one thing that's very peculiar to us, because I asked many of my friends in other sovereign wealth funds, even with our friends, our northern neighbor in Russia recently. I talked to their sovereign wealth fund, and I was really surprised by their answer, because they said, well, we're on market. I said, how market are you? They told me, and after they told me, I was really, very impressed. They were very new compared to us, but they have everything totally marked on the market. So that sort of challenge we have to change. But that's only a phenomenon rather than that's not the reason. The reason is much more, much deeper than that. It's the overall system where this is our system over the past few thousand years. The government always has a much stronger urge to control, and not only to control economy, to control how things are done, but really to control how the personnel are chosen, how the people are thinking. That's a bigger challenge for us, and that, of course, with the past 30 years of the reform, we have changed a great deal. And just now we were talking about, the flourishing of the internet, about this new phenomenon called WeChat in China. Within 6 months, the user has increased from 0 to 350 million. And it's increasing that fast. And every day people talk about it. And then very soon, I'm sure, it's going to surpass the Facebook. And one great significance of that is that information gets such a velocity and such a speed on the internet that nobody can really do anything about. So with this sort of thing, you can think of the whole new generation of people who come out very much used to the kind of the free flow of information rather than being conditioned in certain ways or being led in certain ways. So I think it's a great sign. And also this new crop of government leaders who have also been through the Cultural Revolution, been through all the difficult times, and been through the whole reform process. And judging from what they have been saying over the past half a year, we're all very optimistic that we're heading for a much better direction. So, in that way, I would really urge that, our friends in this country should look at China along that sort of light. If you read all the, many of the investment professionals here probably read your research papers every day, and I read that every day, every night. And, over the past few months, it's mostly a very depressing picture about China. Say, the numbers are down by 1 basis point. So everyone gets so, excited about China's problem. For me, these times, I constantly asked about the numbers. I really don't worry about numbers at all. Why do you worry? Because, it's a big economy and there's such a big ship for it to turn around. It takes a long time. And if you go to China, if you travel a lot in China, like myself, I travel a lot in the poor areas. And in Tibet, in Xinjiang, in Sichuan, in Qinghai, Gansu, Ningxia, Guizhou, and all these faraway provinces. You go to small towns and see how people are living, see how these people, what these people worry about, and what these people are happy about. And then you see this whole trend really is going to a much better direction. Especially, I just give you two examples. One, over the years, for all these years, because I worked for the National Social Security Fund for 4.5 years before I became president of this company 6 years ago. And I was always worried about our overall Social Security system. I was always worried about the fact that, have a sort of two-track system where all the agrarian population was not really taken care of enough. Therefore, these people were really discriminated against. But now, it happened only very quickly within the past 2-3 years. All of a sudden, we had this whole new system, what we call 新农合. It's called the new type agricultural, medical, cooperative medical insurance. And people have been advocating it for over 10 years. nothing was done for quite a while, but all of a sudden the government realized that it really didn't take that much money to do it. The government had put in, for the past 2-3 years, 300 billion yuan. That's for China's economy. It's a very little amount of money. 300 billion yuan paid for everyone in the countryside in China, medical insurance. So the purpose of my trip recently down to Gansu and Qinghai, one of the purposes is to see whether these things are in real. So I went to the villages and talked to people there. And most of these people there are, you no longer see young and strong laborers there. It's mostly, grannies, grandpas there, and their children all working on coastal lines, and they have their children, grandchildren with them. So I asked them what they're worried about, and they gave me a lot of answers. No one mentioned medical. I said, "What about medical?" I thought, you guys are, I was talking to this granny, 72 years old. I said, "Aren't you worried about it if you get sick?" She smiled. She said, "No, we have the Xinlonghe." I said, "Is it real?" She said, "Yes. Last month I got some problem, and I went to the clinic, and then the government paid 95% of it. I paid only 10 yuan." So I was surprised. So I asked because accompanying me was the governor of that province. The governor, I looked at him. He was almost embarrassed. He turned around and asked the granny, he said, "Is it real? Did anyone tell you to tell him that?" She said, "Oh, no, nobody told me that. It's true. Ask everyone." So we went to the neighbor. We asked other people, and they all said it's true. So the government really has made good on its promise, and all these people are now, and they said, "Okay, if we get sick, the bills will pick up first, and then we worry about the payment later, and the payment would always be over 90% depending on the various things." So in most of this is a very poor area. This is one of the 512 poorest counties in the country, in Gansu province. And if their people, do it that way, then in other places must be much better than that. The second example is, when I travel to many of the poor counties, many of the poor towns, and everywhere you go to I visit all these markets and food stores and all these places. Even in very faraway places from Chengdu or from Xining, and you see almost every kind of fruit you can find in Beijing. Many of the fruits, of course, are not produced there. They're produced in Thailand or in the Philippines. And I would ask them, why, this is so far away from anywhere, why would people buy this? "Oh, people, local people." I said, "Local people eat these things?" He said, "Yes, of course. You don't know. You city people, you think we local people don't deserve to eat these fruits?" So, to me, this is a major development of the country in terms of consumption. When people talk about China, it's people save and they don't consume. And you go to these places, it's really coming up everywhere in the country. And you go to, Xining is the smallest capital city of all provinces in China, and has and it's always we always regard it as a big village and a very poor area. And now you go there, there's a whole street filled with stores selling outdoor equipment. Outdoor equipment for rich people, supposedly going out and, having backpack and having clothes and shoes, which are totally expensive for daily use, and walking sticks. And I asked those people, I said, "Who do you hope to sell these for?" So, "Oh, people come here all the time. Can you make money?" "Yes, we do make money." So, if you go to those places, instead of going to, all the glitzy, super buildings in Beijing or Shanghai, and this change is actually happening. So I'm very optimistic about it, and I think it's definitely going to the right direction. But having said that, still I'm coming back to my challenge, which is really for us, it's not just the economic conditions, these basic economic numbers, but really the system itself still needs to be improved on, and we are still expecting the government to do more in that regard, to reverse the trend, the past few years of trend of major state enterprises becoming stronger and more monopolistic about things, and the interest groups getting stronger and being stronger to influence our laws and regulations. That we have to address, and that looks like the government is addressing. So I hope, probably within half a year to a year, we'll see much more clear where we're going. And my confidence in that regard is quite high. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gao. In the interest of time, I know we're standing between you and your beef tenderloin lunch. I think what we'll do is we'll ask just one question. And this question came in quite a bit earlier. And this relates to the BRICS, Russia, Brazil, India, and China. These countries,
and South Africa.
Yes, right. Recently meeting to discuss a central financial institution to integrate financial systems of the BRIC nations. Would you share with us your thoughts on this?
Well, this is a long-term subject, and I personally think that it's I support this idea that the BRICS countries should get together and try to work out on certain things, but it's not easy because the BRICS, it's a created concept. It's created by our friend in this country, great country of the United States, and by an investment banker, right? And these countries have nothing in common but for the size, right? And we individually we've been dealing with every one of the BRIC countries, and every one of them is great in certain ways, and every one of them, including ourselves, has shortcomings. So in many ways we are complementary. Because of that, I think it's good that we try to link up and try to do things together. And the problem is that these countries all have very different concerns in certain ways. And so for the proposal that we set up a common sort of financial institution, namely someone called it the BRICS Bank, and they proposed that China should contribute more in that bank than anyone else and all that sort of thing. I think it's not a matter of money itself. They even gave the numbers. $100 billion, China should contribute about 50% of that, and the Russians and Brazilians, Indians, each will contribute a certain number. That's a great idea, but whether or not that can work, I don't really know, because I've been observing all these international institutions for a long time, and very often these things don't work. At times when it does work, you have to find common ground somewhere. And I saw your poster up there saying common ground. In Chinese, actually we have a better translation. Chinese is 求同存异. We strive for consensus, but we realize our differences, and we do have a lot of differences in countries. And recently, CIC specifically have done a lot with the Russians because the Russian government is very gung-ho about developing its infrastructure and its Far East and many things. And the two state leaders talked together, and at their proposal they set up a fund called the Russian China Fund, investment fund, and we each of us, there are someone else than us, each would contribute over $1 billion, and then other institutions in these two countries will contribute some money into it. Initially it's $3 billion. It's not a big amount for the size of the two countries, but it's a good start. And the Russian president and the Russian premier, prime minister, both were very excited about it. But I think it's much easier to deal with. Carla would know this. It's much easier to deal with one party. Two parties get together, but it's a lot more. For every added party, the complication of the things would increase exponentially. So for 5 countries of that size, it's not very easy.